Today, we are going to kill Hernán Cortés. Not symbolically, not politically, we shall kill him in the flesh. And in watching him draw his last breath, we will witness the birth of a superpower capable of staring the West dead in the eye 5 centuries later. Banish the textbook cliches of the naive Indian kneeling before the cross. Forget the illusion of technological inevitability. History so often hangs by a thread, a single heartbeat, the slip of a horse's hoof on a slick, rain-washed stone. Before plunging into this alternate reality, let us recall the raw facts. In June 1520, the Aztec Empire is a colossus with feet of clay, paralyzed by the arrival of bearded strangers. Moctezuma II is dead. The Spaniards are trapped in Tenochtitlan, the Venice of the New World. They must flee. In our reality, Cortés survives this desperate retreat, the Noche Triste, and returns a year later to obliterate Mesoamerican civilization. But today, destiny changes allegiances. The rain falls heavier, the night is blacker, and the Aztec fury is cold, calculated, and methodical. The rain does not merely fall, it crashes down like a final judgment upon the Valley of Mexico. Along the Tlacopan Causeway, the lone artery of escape from the lake city, the Spanish column presses forward in a deathly hush, broken only by the muffled clinking of armor and the ragged, panicked breathing of horses. They are laden with smelted gold, that cursed metal torn from the walls of Axayacatl's palace. It is this very burden that will drag them to their doom. In our history, a woman drawing water raises the alarm. Here, it is the warrior priests, the Coachique, the elite of the elite who have sworn never to take a backward step, waiting for them in the dark. They do not sleep. They have severed the removable bridges, not simply to trap the Spaniards, but to funnel them into precise, premeditated slaughter zones. A thick fog veils the 1,000 canoes silently encircling the causeway. The carnage begins with the piercing whistle of 1,000 slingstones. Then, the collision. The horses, maddened by the sudden stench of blood and the deafening roar of conch shells, rear up in terror. This is the fulcrum on which history pivots. Cortés's mount, a high-strung bay stallion, slips on the spilled entrails of a fallen Tlaxcalan soldier. The Captain General, weighed down by his full plate armor and the gold ingots stitched into his breeches, topples into the ink-black waters of Lake Texcoco. He thrashes, desperate to swim, but the sheer weight of his greed is unforgiving. A leather-clad hand seizes his throat, then another. These are no demons. They are jaguar warriors dragging him down into the suffocating muck. A blade of obsidian, sharper than a surgeon's scalpel, finds the fatal gap in his gorget. The black water blooms red. Hernán Cortés dies drowned, throat slit, anonymous among his perishing men, stripped of all glory and robbed of any final words. Absolute panic takes hold. Deprived of Cortés's voice to rally the ranks, devoid of his tactical genius to improvise, the column disintegrates. Pedro de Alvarado, his second in command, infamous for his cruelty, attempts a suicidal breakout. Unhorsed by a harpoon, he is taken alive. By dawn, not a single Spaniard remains free upon the causeway. There are no survivors to whisper of the horror, no battered retreat to Tlaxcala to forge a new army. The expedition is utterly annihilated. Cuitlahuac, the newly crowned Huey Tlatoani, surveys the devastation in the pale morning light. He does not smile. He knows this victory tastes of ash and blood. He immediately commands that the corpses be dredged from the lake, not for ritual feasting, but to study their skin of metal. Jerónimo de Aguilar, the Spanish translator, is found violently trembling beneath a mound of the dead. Dragged before the emperor, his life is spared, but the toll will be absolute. He must tell them everything. Everything he knows of the king who dwells beyond the great water, the secrets of black powder, and the art of breaking the great beasts. The military triumph is absolute, but a biological enemy has already breached the walls. Smallpox, the Huey Cocolitzli, erupts in September 1520, It is the apocalypse. The gleaming streets of Tenochtitlan are reduced to charnel houses. The indigenous immune system, wholly virgin to the virus, collapses. Cuitlahuac, the strongman, the architect of the Noche Triste, falls ill. For 10 agonizing days he burns with fever. The priests prepare to name his successor, but Cuitlahuac refuses to die. Forever scarred by the pox, he rises from his sickbed like a man resurrected. To the masses, it is a theological miracle. He is the one who traversed Mictlan, the underworld, and returned. His authority becomes absolute, divine, and unquestionable. Forged in this newly won legitimacy, Cuitlahuac enforces a brutal cultural revolution. Counseled by Aguilar, who understands the contagious nature of the plague, the emperor shatters millennial taboos. He mandates the immediate cremation of the dead in place of traditional funerary rites. He imposes martial quarantines. Any infected district is bricked up, its inhabitants fed over the barricades or left to rot. It is a merciless sanitary dictatorship. The population plummets by 40%. Millions of lives are extinguished, yet the social bedrock holds firm. The empire does not fracture, it contracts, and it hardens. The decade of 1520 to 1530 is one of profound silence. The empire seals its borders. Within, a mutation takes root. The goldsmiths, artisans of unprecedented delicacy, learn to hammer the salvaged iron of Spanish broadswords into deadly spearheads. It is cold metallurgy, primitive yet vastly superior to stone. The surviving horses, a dozen mares and stallions, are revered as national treasures within the royal gardens of Chapultepec. They are not ridden into battle, they are bred, guarded over by an order of veterinary priests. The Tlaxcalans, watching their Spanish allies wiped out and their own ranks decimated by the plague, have no choice but to accept Cuitlahuac's ultimatum: submission or extermination. They choose integration. The empire ceases to be an extractive tyranny. It transforms into a confederation of survival, bound by a shared primal terror of what will eventually return from the sea. If you're enjoying this alternate timeline, drop a like and subscribe. Thank you. Spain, hindered by vast distances and administrative chaos, finally dispatches a second armada in 1538. But the Mexico they find is no longer the Mexico of 1519. The Spaniards make landfall at Veracruz, only to smash into a wall of scorched earth tactics. There are no pitched battles, no easy targets. The jungle itself is weaponized into a lethal trap. The Mexica warriors now wear vests of reinforced cotton, soaked in brine, capable of stopping an arquebus ball fired from afar. Above all, they have deciphered the critical weakness of black powder. It despises the tropical damp, it is agonizingly slow to load, and it is finite. They do not seek to conquer through firepower, but through sheer attrition and disease. The Spanish expedition bogs down into a festering stalemate. It is a tropical Vietnam centuries ahead of its time. Spain, bled dry by the European wars of Charles V, cannot sustain a forever war without the immediate injection of Aztec gold. It is here that the diplomatic genius of the Anahuac truly reveals itself. Across the ocean, Francis I of France, the sworn enemy of the Habsburgs, learns from corsairs that the Emperor of the Indies is holding the line. For France, it is a miraculous windfall, a chance to rip open a second economic front. In 1545, a French frigate drops anchor discreetly in a cove north of modern-day Tampico. Contact is forged. The bargain struck is cynical, fiercely pragmatic, and purely commercial. Mountains of gold and silver, wealth the Aztecs possess in abundance but whose inflationary value they ignore, traded for the very things they cannot conjure from the earth: saltpeter, ingots of pure iron, and master armorers. The Mexica do not adopt Christianity. They have seen firsthand that the cross offered no shield to the Spaniards. Instead, they appropriate the Europeans' most potent weapon, the Latin alphabet. It is infinitely more efficient than glyphs for managing an expanding empire. Within a single generation, a new caste of bilingual scribes rises to power. The butterfly effect upon Europe is utterly devastating. Starved of the ceaseless hemorrhage of American silver, Spain defaults and goes bankrupt in 1557, and again in 1575. The invincible armada of 1588 is never built, its timber rotting in shipyards for lack of coin. Elizabethan England and France flourish. The Counter-Reformation, stripped of its wartime treasury, slowly cedes ground. We must quicken our pace, for time flows differently upon this continent. The 17th century witnesses the ironclad consolidation of the Anahuac Confederation. The borders calcify. To the north, English and French colonies take tentative root, but any expansion toward the southwest crashes into a military wall. The Rio Grande becomes the Rhine of the New World, a heavily militarized frontier bristling with jagged forts of volcanic stone. 18th century Mexican society utterly captivates the philosophers of the Enlightenment. Montesquieu and Voltaire rhapsodize over Tenochtitlan, painting it as a tropical Rome, pristine, brutally ordered, fundamentally rational. They romanticize it naturally. From their salons, they cannot grasp the terrifying rigidity of a system where the individual is reduced to ash before the blazing furnace of the community. For the society had mutated to survive. Mass human sacrifice, demographically suicidal, has been eradicated. In its place stands the blood service, Nextlahuali. It is a revolutionary concept. Every citizen, peasant and noble alike, owes 2 years of their life to the state, shedding their sweat either in the army ranks or the colossal irrigation works. Huitzilopochtli is no longer the insatiable deity demanding beating hearts. He has become the great motor of the sun, demanding the vital life force of collective labor. It is a theocratic collectivism that foreshadows the darkest modern nationalisms. Technologically, the Anahuac has clawed its way to parity, though with its own distinct evolution. Lacking easy access to coal in the early days, they pushed hydraulic engineering to its absolute zenith. Their firearms are reverse-engineered copies, but their cavalry has become the finest on the globe. The Lancers of the Sun, riding robust Mustang stock, are the undisputed terror of the Texas plains. In 1776, as the 13 American colonies ignite in rebellion against the British Crown, the Anahuac remains staunchly neutral, watching this embryonic republic with eyes full of suspicion. In 1790, they signed the Treaty of the Mississippi with the fledgling United States, carving the continent into spheres of influence. It is an armed peace, cold, calculating, and eternally vigilant. The 19th century is fraught with peril. The Industrial Revolution redraws the map of the world. Steam and steel supplant wood and muscle. The Anahuac, immensely wealthy but deeply conservative, teeters on the edge of obsolescence. It is the Council of Four, an institution that has evolved into a ruthless technocracy that triggers the Great Modernization in 1840. They bring in Prussian engineers to carve iron railways straight through the jagged spine of the Sierra Madre. The inevitable collision with the United States explodes in 1846. American manifest destiny slams headfirst into a brutal wall of reality. The American-Mexico War is no triumphal march. It is an industrial bloodbath. Picture the scene. Waist-deep in the mud of a trench near San Antonio, a Mexican sergeant, born of the Jaguar nobility, drafts a letter to his family. He writes not in pictograms, but in Romanized Nahuatl, wielding a steel-nibbed pen. Above his head, American artillery shells shriek through the sky, but before him, primitive Anahuac Gatling guns, purchased from the British, scythe down the charging cavalry of the US Army. The war grinds to a horrific halt. There is no triumphant march on Mexico City. The peace treaty of 1848 is a bitter, exhausted draw. California is carved out as a free republic, a co-managed buffer state, a viper's nest of spies and merchants where 3 languages echo in the streets. The dawn of the 20th century sees the Anahuac awaken as a petroleum leviathan. The discovery of black gold in the Gulf funds a state-of-the-art battle fleet and a nascent air force. Throughout the 2 world wars, the Confederation plays the role of the cynical arbiter. It gladly sells its oil to the Allies, but flatly refuses to send its sons to bleed out for the petty squabbles of the tribes of Europe. Yet, the Anahuac also transforms into a sanctuary. In the 1930s and 40s, the University of Tlatelolco opens its doors to Jewish scientists and Spanish Republicans fleeing the suffocating grip of fascism. This unprecedented fusion, the marriage of European theoretical physics and ancestral Mayan mathematical rigor, catapults the Anahuac directly into the civilian atomic age by the 1950s. If we open our eyes to this reality today, the world is at once deeply familiar and yet dizzyingly alien. Three superpowers dominate the West: the European Union, the United States, a formidable continental force but stripped of its global hegemony, and the Anahuac Federation. Mexico Tenochtitlan reigns as the largest metropolis on the planet, a megalopolis of 35 million souls that makes Tokyo look like a provincial market town. Lake Texcoco was never drained, it was mastered. Skyscrapers of bioglass and black basalt thrust upward from the water, stitched together by a nervous system of silent magnetic levitation trains. The air is crystal clear, for the Anahuac, driven by a primal obsession with ecological survival, outlawed the internal combustion engine within its city limits as early as 1980. The society is no liberal democracy in the Western sense. It is a fiercely collectivist, hierarchical machine where civic duty utterly eclipses individual rights. There is mass surveillance, to be sure. The social pressure is crushing. But there is also an almost total eradication of extreme poverty, the legacy of the ancient clan, Calpulli, redistribution systems. The dominant faith is a scientific solar deism. The sun is no longer worshipped as a capricious god, but revered as the ultimate source of physical energy, an entity commanding ecological respect. The Day of the Dead remains the most sacred national holiday on the continent, a full week where the mighty engine of the economy grinds to a halt to celebrate the unbroken continuity of memory. Is this world a better one? It is hard to say. It is undeniably harder, more demanding, and perhaps far less free for the solitary individual. But it is a world where the Americas are not merely the subservient extension of Europe. As one stares at the luminous pyramids of Tenochtitlan, glowing against the night sky, sheltering cutting-edge biotechnology labs within their stone flanks, the realization hits. History is not an inevitability. It is a choice. And in this reality, 500 years ago, a people simply chose not to die. They are no longer a tragic footnote in our textbooks. They are the main chapter.